I survived firefights, roadside bombs, and 3 tours in Afghanistan, but nothing prepared me for the emotional ambush waiting at home. One overheard conversation destroyed everything I thought I knew about my 9-year marriage. Instead of confronting her, I did something no one expected from a decorated Army sergeant. I vanished into thin air. No goodbyes. No forwarding address. Just gone. A year later, she found me. Now I have to decide if the life I rebuilt is worth more than the truth she claims I never heard. My name is Derek Sullivan. I'm 35 years old, and for the past 12 years, I've been a master sergeant in the United States Army. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and countless training exercises across the globe. That's been my life. It puts food on the table and gives my family security, but it comes at a price. When I first met Heather during shore leave in San Diego, she was this vibrant, laughing woman who stole my heart in a single weekend. We were married 6 months later, right before my second deployment. She knew what she was signing up for. At least, that's what I told myself. Military life isn't for everyone, but Heather assured me she could handle it. "I'm tougher than I look, soldier," she'd said with that smile that could light up a room. For the first 5 years, we made it work. She'd send care packages with her perfume sprayed on letters. We'd video call whenever my schedule and the time zones aligned. When I came home, those first few days were always electric, like we were making up for lost time. We bought a modest house near Fort Bragg, with a porch swing and a yard big enough for the kids we talked about having someday. But somehow, someday never seemed to arrive. There was always another deployment, another reason to wait. "After this tour, I'd promise. Then we'll start trying." Heather would nod, but I started noticing the disappointment she tried to hide. The spark in her eyes dimmed a little more each time I zipped up my duffel bag. My unit became my second family. Brothers in arms who understood the weight of the uniform in ways civilians never could. Staff Sergeant Martinez and I had saved each other's lives more times than we could count. Captain Reynolds was the best CO a man could ask for, tough but fair. These were the men I'd die for without hesitation. Back home, though, my real family was becoming strangers. Heather stopped asking detailed questions about my deployments. Our conversations grew shorter, more routine. I figured it was normal. The honeymoon phase was bound to end eventually. "How's everything at home?" I'd ask during our calls. "Fine," she'd say. "Just the usual." The usual. As if maintaining our life while I was gone was just some mundane task. I didn't push it. After seeing what I'd seen overseas, I didn't want to burden her with my reality. And I guess I didn't want to hear about the dinner parties and neighborhood gossip that made up hers. The truth is, I was more comfortable in a combat zone than in my own living room. At least in Afghanistan, I knew my role, my purpose. At home, I was just a visitor passing through, trying to remember where we kept the coffee filters and which day was garbage day. By year 7 of our marriage, Heather had built a life that functioned perfectly well without me. She had her routines, her friends, her way of doing things. And each time I returned, I felt more like an intruder than a husband coming home. Little did I know that the next deployment would change everything. Not because of what happened overseas, but because of what I'd discover when I returned. After my third deployment to Afghanistan, I noticed something had changed between Heather and me. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just small things that nag at the back of my mind during lonely nights in the barracks. I remember coming home from that tour, expecting the usual routine. Heather would be waiting at the gate, hair done nice, wearing that blue dress I loved. We'd hug like we never wanted to let go, then spend the next few days barely leaving our bedroom. That's how it had always been. Except this time, she wasn't wearing the blue dress. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The hug felt mechanical, like she was going through the motions. I told myself I was being paranoid. That PTSD from the roadside bomb we'd hit 2 months earlier was making me see problems where none existed. "I'm just tired," she said when I asked if everything was okay. "Work's been crazy." I believed her. Or at least I wanted to. That night, when I reached for her in bed, she didn't push me away, but she wasn't really there either. Like her body was present, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Afterward, she rolled over and fell asleep without a word, while I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks. The next few weeks established a new normal. Heather spent more time on her phone, smiling at texts from people I didn't know. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say, "Just friends from work," or you don't know them. She started going out more on weekends, describing them as girls' nights that somehow always ran until after midnight. I tried to reconnect with her. Booked a nice dinner at that Italian place where we had our first date back in San Diego. Bought her flowers. Suggested a weekend getaway to Myrtle Beach. Her response? That's sweet, Derek, but I've got plans with Amanda that weekend. Amanda, her co-worker, who I'd never met despite Heather talking about her constantly. The physical distance between us grew too. Those casual touches, her hand on my shoulder as she passed by, my arm around her waist while we watched TV, vanished like smoke. If I initiated contact, she wouldn't pull away, but she never started it anymore. Then there were the phone calls during my training exercises. In the past, we'd talk for an hour, sharing every detail of our days apart. Now our conversations lasted 5 minutes, if she picked up at all. Hey babe, just checking in, I'd say. Everything's fine here. How's training? The usual. Missing you. Well, I should go. I've got an early morning. Click. End of discussion. Staff Sergeant Martinez noticed a change in me. Sullivan, you look like someone shot your dog. Everything good on the home front? I shrug it off. Men in my unit didn't talk about marital problems. That was a weakness I couldn't afford to show. Besides, admitting it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. But deep down, I knew the truth. My marriage was crumbling like sand through my fingers, and I had no idea how to hold it together. My unit got called back early from a training exercise in Louisiana due to an approaching hurricane. I didn't tell Heather. Thought I'd surprise her. After 9 years of marriage, spontaneity seemed like exactly what we needed. I pulled into our driveway around 7 p.m. on a Thursday. The house lit up against the darkening sky. Music drifted through the partially open windows, some pop song Heather had been obsessed with lately. I grabbed my duffel bag, a bouquet of wildflowers I picked up at a roadside stand, and headed for the door. That's when I heard her voice, clear, animated, and happier than it had sounded in months. But she wasn't alone. No, he's not back until Sunday, she was saying, her tone light. Training exercise, or whatever. I froze on the porch. Through the window, I could see her pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, wine glass in hand. Honestly, Lisa, I can't do this anymore, she continued, voice dropping. Living with Derek is like living with a ghost. He's physically here, then he's gone, then he's back, but he's never really present, you know? My grip tightened around the flowers. I should have announced myself, should have walked away. Anything but stand there eavesdropping. But I couldn't move. I hate being with him now. It's all so empty. Her words sliced through me like enemy fire. We barely talk. We don't connect. Sometimes I look at him and wonder what I ever saw in him. I heard a laugh, bitter, unfamiliar. Leave him? God, I've thought about it. But do you know how much work that would be? The house, the accounts, explaining to his family, my family. She sighed heavily. It's just easier to coast along. It's not like he notices anyway. The flowers dropped from my hand. I'd taken bullets that hurt less than this. I haven't loved him in years, Lisa. I'm just going through the motions now. I backed away from the door, stumbling slightly. My training kicked in, went under attack, retreat, and regroup. I made it to my truck, started the engine, and drove to the nearest motel, her words echoing in my head. I hate being with him now. All those nights in Afghanistan, dodging mortars and surviving firefights, I'd held onto the image of Heather waiting for me. Now I realized she'd been wishing I wouldn't come back at all. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The woman I'd built my life around, the person I'd pictured while lying in dusty bunkers half a world away, had just revealed that our entire relationship was a lie. By dawn, I'd gone through every stage of grief. Denial. Maybe I'd misheard. Anger. 9 years of my life wasted on someone who saw me as a burden. Bargaining. If I'd taken a desk job instead of deploying, could things have been different? Depression. What was the point of surviving combat just to come home to this? Finally, acceptance. My marriage was over. Had been for years, apparently. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at my wedding ring. Gold was supposed to be indestructible, but relationships? Those were fragile as glass. Staff Sergeant Martinez called around noon, worried when I didn't show up for our planned fishing trip. Sullivan, you alive? Your wife said you never came home last night. So Heather had noticed my absence after all. Probably relieved. I'm fine, I said. Just need some time. Brother, I've known you too long. What's going on? I told him. Everything. Jesus, he muttered. What are you going to do? Good question. The military had trained me for every scenario except this one. There was no field manual for what to do when your wife admits she hates being with you. I'm not going back, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. You mean to the house? To any of it? By afternoon, my path was clear. I'd request an immediate transfer to Fort Irwin in California. I had enough savings to start over. A clean break. I drove to an ATM and withdrew the maximum amount, $500. Then to a pawn shop where I sold my grandfather's watch for another $600. Not much, but enough to disappear. I bought a prepaid phone, then removed the SIM card from my regular cell and snapped it in half. That connection to Heather, gone. I wrote a short email to my commanding officer requesting emergency leave, citing family issues. Then I checked out of the motel and started driving west. No note for Heather. No explanation. No confrontation. She'd made her feelings clear. I was nothing but an inconvenience in her life. Well, I was about to solve that problem for her. As the miles stretched between us, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in years, I was making a choice for myself. Not for duty, not for her, just for me. I drove for 3 days straight, stopping only for gas, fast food, and the occasional hour of sleep at highway rest stops. My military training came in handy. I knew how to function on minimal rest and how to stay below the radar. I headed southwest, putting as much distance between myself and Fort Bragg as possible. By the third day, I reached Tucson, Arizona, far enough from North Carolina that running into anyone who knew me would be nearly impossible. The desert landscape felt appropriate, harsh, unforgiving, but somehow honest in its brutality. No pretense, no false promises. I found a modest extended-stay motel on the outskirts of town. Cash only, paid 2 weeks in advance. The manager, a leathery-faced Vietnam vet named Cal, didn't ask questions when I used my middle name, James, instead of Derek. Military, he asked, eyeing my high and tight haircut and ramrod posture. Former, I lied. Technically, I was AWOL, but I'd already emailed my CO requesting emergency family leave. That would buy me 30 days before things got complicated. Cal nodded. Room 114. Back corner. Extra privacy. Military discount. My new home was sparse. Queen bed, kitchenette, small table with 2 chairs, and a bathroom with a shower that never quite got hot enough. But it was mine, and Heather had no idea where I was. That alone made it better than the house we'd shared. The first week, I barely left the room. I grew a beard for the first time since basic training, watched mindless TV, and tried not to think about the life I'd abandoned. I ignored the phantom buzzing of the phone I no longer carried, the instinct to check in with a woman who probably hadn't even filed a missing persons report yet. How long before she noticed I was really gone? How long before she realized this wasn't just another deployment? And would she even care, or would she be relieved? I accessed my email once, using the motel's ancient desktop computer in the lobby. 17 messages from Heather, ranging from confused to angry. Where are you? Is this some kind of joke? Your CO called. You're in serious trouble. Please just let me know you're alive. The last one, sent 5 days after I left. Whatever you think you heard, we need to talk about it. Please come home. So she'd figured out I'd overheard her. No apologies, though. No, I didn't mean it. Or, I still love you. Just, we need to talk, probably about how to divide our assets. I logged out without replying and never checked again. By week 2, restlessness set in. I couldn't hide in a motel room forever. I needed money, purpose, human interaction. The cash from pawning my watch wouldn't last long, and accessing my bank accounts might give away my location. I walked into a construction site on the growing edge of town and asked for work. The foreman, Rodriguez, looked me up and down. Ever build anything before? Helped construct temporary housing in Afghanistan. Fast learner. He handed me a hard hat. $7 an hour, cash. Be here at 6 tomorrow. Just like that, I had a job. Not the career I'd spent 12 years building in the Army, but honest work that would keep me fed and housed while I figured out my next move. Construction work was exactly what I needed. Physical labor that left me too exhausted to think, surrounded by men who respected hard work and minded their own business. No one on the site cared about my past. I was just Sully, the guy who showed up early and never complained. Rodriguez bumped my pay to $9 an hour after the first week, when he saw I could operate most of the heavy machinery. Military guys, he'd said, nodding approvingly. Always good with equipment. I moved out of the motel after a month and into a small apartment closer to downtown. Nothing fancy, but it had a decent-sized bedroom, a balcony overlooking the mountains, and crucially, it was in my new name. I'd acquired a fake ID through one of my construction colleagues. Not strictly legal, but necessary for my fresh start. For the first time in my adult life, I had no schedule, no orders, no expectations. I could eat when I wanted, sleep when I wanted, spend my free time however I chose. The freedom was both exhilarating and terrifying. I started running in the mornings before work, pushing myself through the desert heat until my lungs burned and sweat soaked through my shirt. Physical pain was easier to handle than emotional wounds. One Saturday, taking my usual route, I literally ran into Mike Fossey. He was jogging the opposite direction, and neither of us was paying attention at the bend in the trail. "Whoa, sorry man," he said, steadying himself. "You okay?" Mike was about my age, with a weathered face that suggested he spent a lot of time outdoors. He invited me for a post-run coffee, and for some reason, I accepted. Turned out he was a former Marine who now ran a wilderness therapy program for veterans with PTSD. Always looking for guides who understand what these guys are going through, he mentioned casually as we finished our coffee. "The pay's not great, but the work matters. Think about it." I did think about it. A lot. By Monday, I'd called him and accepted a part-time position leading weekend expeditions. Construction paid the bills, but working with veterans gave me purpose again. Slowly, I built a new life. My apartment accumulated furniture, a comfortable couch, a decent TV, a bookshelf filled with novels I'd always meant to read but never had time for during my military career. I made friends, not close ones, not yet, but people I could grab a beer with after work or watch a game with on Sundays. When thoughts of Heather surfaced, I pushed them away. I wasn't ready to process what had happened, to examine the ruins of my marriage. Maybe someday, but not yet. For now, survival meant looking forward, not back. 6 months into my new life, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The beard, the longer hair, the tan from working outdoors. I looked like a different man. In many ways, I was. The soldier who left Fort Bragg was fading, replaced by someone who was finally learning to live on his own terms. Someone who was healing, even if the scars would always remain. 1 year after my disappearing act, life in Tucson had settled into a comfortable rhythm. My job with Mike's wilderness therapy program had expanded to full-time when I quit construction. Leading veterans through the healing power of nature felt right, like I was finally using my military experience for something truly meaningful. I'd moved to a better apartment, bought a used Jeep Wrangler perfect for desert trails, and even adopted a dog, a one-eyed shepherd mix from the shelter that I named Rex. My existence wasn't fancy, but it was mine, peaceful, honest. Then came the call that shattered my carefully constructed calm. I was prepping gear for a weekend expedition when my phone rang, the new number only a handful of people had. "Hello. Is this Derek Sullivan?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. My guard instantly went up. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marion Hayes. I'm Heather's sister." My heart stuttered. In 12 months, I had no contact with anyone from my old life. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important," she said. "What matters is Heather needs to speak with you." I nearly hung up. What could Heather possibly have to say that I needed to hear? I'd spent a year rebuilding myself from the ground up after her words destroyed everything I thought I knew about us. "I'm not interested," I said flatly. "Derek, please. She's been searching for you since you left. She hired a private investigator. She's been desperate to explain." "Explain what? That she hates being with me? That I was nothing but a convenience?" I heard her loud and clear the first time. Marion sighed. She was venting to a friend after a terrible day. "People say things they don't mean." "No," I cut her off. "People say things they don't think anyone will hear. Big difference. She still loves you." I laughed, a harsh sound that even I didn't recognize. She specifically said she hadn't loved me in years. Those exact words. She was wrong, Marion insisted. She realized that when you disappeared, the panic, the fear, She thought something had happened to you. When she figured out you'd heard her on the phone that night, it broke her. I leaned against my Jeep, suddenly needing the support. Rex whined at my feet, sensing my distress. What does she want from me, Marion? Just to talk. That's all. One conversation. The old Derek would have jumped at this chance. The old Derek lived for Heather's approval, organized his entire existence around her happiness. But I wasn't that man anymore. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I'm not promising anything. After hanging up, I took Rex for a long hike, trying to clear my head. The desert stretched out around me, vast and indifferent to human drama. That's what I loved about this place. Its harsh beauty reminded me how small our problems really were. By sunset, I'd made my decision. I would talk to Heather, not for her but for me, to prove to myself that she no longer had power over me. I texted Marion. I'll speak with her. One time. Give her my number. Heather called the next evening. I was sitting on my balcony, nursing a beer, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and crimson. When my phone lit up with an unknown number, I knew it was her. I let it ring 3 times, steadying my breathing like I used to before entering a combat zone. Then I answered. Derek. Her voice hadn't changed. Somehow, I'd expected it would have. Yeah. A pause, filled with a year's worth of unspoken words. I can't believe it's really you. You're alive. Her voice cracked. I wasn't sure. I'm alive. What else could I say? I've been looking everywhere for you. The army wouldn't tell me anything. Your friends, your family. No one knew where you'd gone. That was the point. Another silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing, slightly shaky. Derek, about what you heard that night. I need to explain. You don't owe me explanations, I interrupted. What you said was pretty clear. No, it wasn't. The sudden force in her voice surprised me. I was having a horrible day. Lisa had just told me she was getting divorced because her husband was cheating, and I was drunk and upset and saying things I didn't mean. I took a swig of beer. Drunk words are sober thoughts. Heather, that's not fair. People vent. They exaggerate. They say stupid things they don't believe when they're frustrated. She paused. Were you never frustrated with me? Did you never say something harsh about me to Martinez or your other army friends? The question hit home. Of course I had complained about her spending habits, her mother's constant interference, the way she rearranged my things while I was deployed. But those have been momentary irritations, not declarations that I hated being with her. Not like that, I said finally. I never said I didn't love you. I do love you, Derek. I always have. I closed my eyes, absorbing the impact of words I'd once desperately wanted to hear. Now they just sound hollow. Then why say you didn't? Why tell Lisa you were only staying because leaving was too much work? Because I was scared, she exclaimed. Scared that you were drifting away, that each deployment took more of you from me. Scared that one day you wouldn't come back at all, either because of an IED or because you'd realize you were happier in your army life than you were with me. I hadn't expected this level of self-awareness from her. The Heather I remembered glossed over problems, pretended everything was fine until it exploded. So, where does that leave us? I asked quietly. I don't know, she admitted. I just know I need to see you, to talk face to face. Please, Derek. The old pull was there, the instinct to give her whatever she wanted. But alongside it was something new, the strength to choose my own path. I need time to think, I said. This isn't a simple decision for me. After we hung up, I called Mike and asked for a few days off. Whatever I decided, I wouldn't be in the right headspace to guide veterans through their healing when my own past had just crashed back into my life. 3 days after our phone call, I agreed to meet Heather in a neutral location, a coffee shop in Phoenix, halfway between Tucson and the airport. I'd driven up that morning, rehearsing what I would say, how I would remain detached and logical. The man she once knew would have forgiven her instantly. That man no longer existed. I arrived early, securing a table in the corner where I could see the entrance. When she walked in, the sight of her hit me harder than expected. She looked both familiar and foreign, thinner, with shorter hair, but still unmistakably Heather. Her eyes found mine immediately. She froze for a moment, then walked over with measured steps. Derek, she said softly, hovering awkwardly before taking the seat across from me. Heather. Up close, I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the nervous way she twisted her wedding ring. She was still wearing it. You look different, she offered. The beard suits you. Thanks. I fought the urge to fill the silence with meaningless small talk. This wasn't a casual reunion. She took a deep breath. I've rehearsed what to say 1,000 times, and now I can't remember any of it. I'm so sorry, Derek, for saying those things, or for me hearing them. She flinched. Both, but mostly for saying them at all. They weren't true. They felt true enough at the time. I countered. I was frustrated, lonely. That night, Lisa had just told me her husband was having an affair, and I started comparing our marriage to theirs, and everything just spiraled. Her eyes welled with tears. But the moment you disappeared, I realized what I'd done. How wrong I was. I studied her face, searching for deception. Found none. Just raw pain and regret. You could have left a note, she continued. Something. Do you have any idea what it was like? Calling hospitals, police stations, thinking you were dead in a ditch somewhere, then realizing you'd hurt me that night, and just gone. I needed a clean break. You ran away, she corrected, a flash of anger cutting through her sadness. Without giving me a chance to explain. Without fighting for us. Her words stung because they contained truth. I had run. What did you expect me to do? Pretend I hadn't heard you say you hated being with me? I expected you to confront me, to call me on my bullshit, the way you always did in Afghanistan when your men made mistakes. Instead, you just vanished. We stared at each other across the table. 9 years of marriage and 1 year of absence compressed into the space between us. I've changed, I said finally. This past year, I'm not the same person. Neither am I, she replied. Losing you changed me, made me realize what matters. I thought about my life in Tucson, my work with veterans, my small circle of friends, Rex waiting at home. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, authentic. What do you want, Heather? Really? She reached across the table, not quite touching me. A second chance. Not to pick up where we left off. We can't. But to start something new. Better. Her voice dropped. I still love you, Derek. I never stopped. For the first time since sitting down, I allowed myself to really look at her. Not through the lens of betrayal, but as she was now. Humbled. Honest. Human. I need time, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make today. She nodded, hope and fear warring in her expression. I understand. I'll wait. As we parted outside the coffee shop, she handed me an envelope. My new address and number. When you're ready. If you're ready, I'll be there. I watched her walk away, wondering if she was walking out of my life for good, or if this was just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. 2 months after meeting Heather in Phoenix, I stood outside her new apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, Rex sitting patiently at my feet. The drive from Tucson had taken 4 days. 4 days of questioning my decision, nearly turning back a dozen times. I'd spent those 2 months soul-searching, talking with Mike, even consulting the therapist who worked with our veteran groups. The question wasn't whether I still had feelings for Heather. I did, buried beneath layers of hurt and self-protection. The question was whether those feelings were enough to build something new. I rang the doorbell before I could change my mind. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to cautious joy. Derek, she breathed. You came. I did. Her eyes dropped to Rex. You brought company. Package deal, I said. Hope that's okay. She knelt to offer her hand to Rex, who sniffed it cautiously before giving it a tentative lick. Absolutely okay, she said, smiling at my canine companion. Inside, her apartment was simple but warm. No trace of our old house in the decor. This place was wholly new. I noticed a framed photo on the wall. Heather with a group of children, all smiling widely. Who are they? I asked, gesturing to the picture. My students. I'm teaching 3rd grade now. I turned to her, surprised. You left your corporate job? She nodded. After you disappeared, nothing felt important anymore. I kept thinking about all the things I wished I'd done differently. She shrugged. Teaching was always my dream. Life's too short for someday. We sat at her kitchen table, 2 changed people attempting to navigate unfamiliar terrain. I sold my half of the house to you, I told her. The money should be in your account by now. I know. Thank you. She hesitated. Does this mean? It means I'm moving back east, I said carefully. I've accepted a position with a veteran therapy program in Tennessee. 3 hours from here. Hope flickered across her face. Close enough for weekends. Close enough to see if whatever's still between us is worth rebuilding. I clarified. I'm not making any promises, Heather. We'd be starting from scratch. That's all I'm asking for. A chance. She reached across the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. I placed my hand in hers, feeling the familiar shape of her fingers, the unfamiliar calluses from her new life as a teacher. I need you to know something, I said, holding her gaze. I forgive you for what you said that night, but I won't ever forget it. She nodded, eyes glistening. Fair enough. And I forgive you for leaving without a word. But I won't forget that either. In that moment, I realized forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about refusing to let it dictate the future. Rex settled at my feet with a contented sigh, as if approving our tentative peace. So, Heather said, a small smile playing at her lips, tell me about your year. I want to know everything. As I began to share my story, I felt something shift between us. Not a return to what was, but the first fragile foundation of what might be. Whether it would be enough, only time would tell. But for the first time in a long time, I was willing to find out.